Working as an nurse takes its toll on you in ways you never expect. The constant flow of critical cases, the endless shifts that blur together, and the weight of responsibility that comes with each decision. It's exhausting. But nothing prepared me for what happened with Sarah. I've been pulling 50 to 60-hour weeks at Chicago General's emergency department, not just because we're understaffed, but because I needed the overtime pay to cover both our expenses. Sarah, my girlfriend of 3 years, hasn't worked since dropping out of nursing school. She claims she's too anxious to work, but I'm starting to think it's just an excuse. Today hit differently. After a particularly grueling 12-hour shift dealing with multiple trauma cases, I dragged myself home at 6 p.m., hoping to at least find some semblance of order in our small one-bedroom apartment. Instead, I found Sarah exactly where I'd left her this morning, in bed, surrounded by half-eaten takeout containers, still in yesterday's clothes. The sight of her scrolling mindlessly through TikTok, unwashed and unbrushed, with delivery bags scattered around like fallen leaves. It was the last straw. The anger that had been simmering for months finally boiled over. How long are you going to live like this? I couldn't keep the exhaustion and frustration out of my voice. I just spent 12 hours trying to save people's lives, and you haven't even bothered to take a shower? Her reaction caught me off guard. Instead of the usual quiet withdrawal or tears, Sarah launched herself at me, screaming about how I didn't understand what she was going through. When I tried to step back, she shoved me hard against the wall. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs, leaving me more shocked than hurt. "I want to break up," I managed to say once I caught my breath, my heart racing from both anger and fear. The change in her was instant. The rage vanished, replaced by panic. "You can't leave me," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I have no one else, Michael. No one. Please don't do this to me." She retreated to the bed, curling in on herself like a wounded animal. Hours later, I tried one more time, approaching her room with what little emotional energy I had left. "Sarah, I can't do this anymore," I said quietly. "This isn't about who you can turn to. This is about my mental health. I can't keep carrying us both." Her response was to grab the scissors from her bedside drawer, holding them with shaking hands as she threatened to hurt herself. The nurse in me couldn't walk away from someone threatening self-harm, even as the rational part of my brain screamed that this was manipulation. I stayed, but something inside me hardened into resolve. Tomorrow would be different. If she followed through on her threats, that would be her choice, not my responsibility. As I lay on the couch that night, listening to her quiet sobs through the thin walls, I felt nothing but a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. 7 years of medical training had taught me how to save lives, but nothing had prepared me for watching someone I once loved slowly self-destruct. Later that evening, the next night, as I stood in our bedroom still in my scrubs, I felt like I was about to deliver bad news to a patient's family. That same heavy weight in my chest, the careful choice of words. Sarah was on the bed, bouncing slightly on her knees with an almost childlike energy, smiling as if this was just another evening. But something in my stance must have given me away, because her smile slowly faded as she read the seriousness in my expression. "We need to talk," I said, the words falling like stones in the quiet room. Sarah's smile flickered, but didn't completely disappear. "About what?" she asked, still bouncing slightly. "Is everything okay at the hospital?" Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to maintain eye contact. "This isn't working anymore. I've tried to be patient, tried to help you find direction, but—" I paused, gathering my thoughts. "I've spent years watching you scroll through your phone instead of living your life. No job applications, no courses, not even a hobby. It's like you're just existing." For the first time in months, maybe years, Sarah seemed to really hear me. She sat still, her eyes focused and alert, nodding as I spoke. Then, to my surprise, she started listing possible job opportunities, talking about online courses she'd been researching, even mentioning specific hospitals where she might apply for administrative positions. I could work at the hospital cafe, she suggested, her voice gaining enthusiasm. Or maybe start with something part-time at first. You could look over my applications, make sure I'm doing everything right. The hope in her voice made what I had to say next even harder. Sarah, I interrupted gently. I don't love you anymore. Not the way I used to. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as understanding slowly dawned on her face, her expression crumpling like tissue paper in rain. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She whispered, tears starting to fall. All those times you asked me to do things, to go out, to take classes. I didn't know you were falling out of love with me. I've been asking you to cook, to join me for activities, to consider going back to school. I even offered to pay for your classes. I reminded her, my voice tight with frustration. Anything to see you engaged in life again. But I didn't know it meant you were giving up on us, she cried, her voice rising with panic. The only thing that makes me happy is spending time with you. You're all I have to look forward to every day. Please, Michael, I'll be better. We can go anywhere you want tomorrow. I'll look into nursing programs again. Just please don't stop loving me. Watching her break down, snot and tears streaming down her face, I felt strangely detached. The emotional exhaustion of the past few years had left me numb. I suggested we pause the conversation until she calmed down, knowing we'd need to revisit this discussion soon. An hour later, when we tried again, Sarah was more composed, but no less desperate. Give me 2 months, she pleaded. Just 2 months to prove I can change. I'll apply everywhere. I'll be a better partner, I promise. She kept listing places she'd apply to, changes she'd make, anything to salvage what was left of our relationship. I never wanted to make her homeless, so I agreed to the 2 months, though my heart wasn't in it. But when I mentioned seeing other people, she became almost frantic, insisting she could fix everything if I just gave her 1 month to make our relationship work. What can I do to make you love me again? She asked repeatedly, her voice breaking. Please don't hate me. I can't lose you. You're all I have. Seeing her on the verge of another breakdown, I reluctantly agreed to evaluate our relationship in a month. In my mind, I figured this would give her time to get back on her feet while gradually accepting the reality of our situation. That night, I slept on the couch, needing space to think. Around 3 a.m., Sarah came out wanting to talk more, but I was emotionally drained. When I told her we'd talk tomorrow, she simply lay down on the floor beside the couch, whispering apologies until I asked her to stop. In the darkness, I could hear her muffled sobs beneath her blanket, but I felt nothing except a deep, hollow exhaustion. The next evening, Sarah approached me with her phone in hand, her expression tentatively hopeful. I saw this thing on TikTok, she began, where couples put their phone on the table with a timer and talk about what's bothering them. Maybe we could try that. I shook my head, feeling a familiar weariness settle over me. That's not necessary. If we're going to have this conversation, we shouldn't need a timer. Let's just talk. She nodded, settling into the chair across from me. When did you stop loving me? The question came out barely above a whisper. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, remembering the countless nights at Chicago General that had shaped my perspective. It wasn't one moment, I explained. It happened gradually, day by day. Then, when were you the most angry? She pressed, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. The memory hit me like a punch to the gut. My first months in the I said finally, the words coming slowly at first, then rushing out like a dam breaking. Do you have any idea what it's like? The pace is relentless. Every day brings new challenges that med school never prepared us for. You're expected to handle trauma cases, cardiac arrests, mass casualties, all while maintaining perfect professionalism. I could feel my voice getting tighter as I continued. That year changed me. It taught me that hard work and dedication actually mean something. And then I'd come home. I had to pause. The contrast between my work life and home life suddenly feeling more stark than ever. I'd come home to find you exactly as I'd left you, glued to your phone, surrounded by delivery containers, no effort to even maintain basic hygiene. I suggested jobs with flexible schedules, different career paths, anything to help you find direction. But you rejected every single suggestion. The disgust I'd been suppressing crept into my voice. Do you know how it feels to spend 12 hours saving lives, then come home to someone who won't even save themselves? Sarah's face crumpled. Why didn't you tell me this was such a big issue? You should have communicated. Stop. I cut her off, my patience finally snapping. Some things shouldn't need to be said. I shouldn't have to remind my partner to shower, to eat properly, to do something, anything, besides mindlessly scroll through social media all day. After exhausting shifts in the last thing I had energy for was begging you to take care of yourself. The words kept coming, harsher than I intended, but honest. When you dropped out of nursing school, I was disappointed but understanding. I thought you were capable of completing the program. You're intelligent enough. But now, after watching you waste years of your life, I realize you never could have made it. The person you've become. She couldn't handle the demands of nursing. I watched my words land like physical blows. That's why I suggested easier jobs, less demanding majors, even just developing a hobby. At that point, any sign of personal growth would have meant something. But you chose to do nothing. Year after year. Do you hate me? Her voice was small, fragile. I studied her face. The face I'd once loved. Now so familiar, and yet so strange. I don't know, I answered honestly. You're a kind person, Sarah. You can be loving and sweet. But I hate what you've done with your life. More than that, I hate what our relationship has become. I feel nothing, just emptiness. Throughout this conversation, she maintained eye contact, though I could see her struggling to hold back tears. When I finished speaking, she asked for time alone and locked herself in our bedroom for the rest of the day. The following day, when we reconvened the next day, Sarah's demeanor had shifted. She sat across from me at our small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee. I think I'm depressed, she said quietly, staring into her cup. Before our talk, I didn't feel sad exactly. I just felt nothing. No motivation, no interest in anything. I thought about the patients I'd seen in the with similar symptoms, the protocol we followed. Have you considered getting tested for ADHD? I suggested gently, drawing on my medical knowledge. There are specialists who. No, she cut me off sharply, her whole body tensing. I don't want to do that. I knew about her fear of hospitals, of medical procedures. It had come up during her nursing school days. But her adamant refusal to even consider evaluation surprised me. This wasn't like getting blood drawn or having N4 placed. This was about understanding herself better. She quickly changed the subject, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. If I change, really change, would you give us another chance? Looking at her hopeful expression, I felt a familiar weariness settle over me. I don't know, Sarah. Right now, I feel nothing. Even if you make changes, I can't guarantee my feelings will come back, especially since it took reaching this breaking point to prompt any action. She pulled out a piece of paper covered in her neat handwriting. I made a list, she said, pushing it toward me. Things I want to try. Photography is at the top. I've been researching cameras. And cooking. I used to love cooking, remember? She grabbed her phone, opening job search apps. Look, I've been applying too. Entry-level positions, places that might hire someone with my background. Sarah, I interrupted, trying to be gentle but firm. If you develop genuine passions, if you truly invest in your personal growth, that would mean more to me than you getting a job. But if you're doing this just to keep me, I let the sentence hang. I thought about my coworkers at the hospital, Jessica and Emma, who'd become my confidants during these difficult months. They'd warned me about love bombing, about the cycle of promises and relapse. They'd even offered their couches if things got worse, though I'd declined. Despite being in a relationship, I was starting to feel increasingly alone. For the next week, Sarah threw herself into activities with almost manic energy. I kept my promise to support her efforts, even after exhausting hospital shifts. But her need for constant validation was overwhelming. She checked my mood multiple times a day, sought physical affection constantly, wanted to spend every free moment together. Even during our outings with her new camera, I could feel her watching me more than the subjects she was supposed to be photographing, searching my face for any sign of returning affection. 2 weeks later, the inevitable crash came, as I'd feared it would. By then, I was physically and emotionally exhausted, splitting my time between intense Earth shifts and Sarah's constant need for attention. I'd started smoking again, something I thought I'd left behind thanks to my coworkers' support, just to cope with the mounting stress. One evening, after another draining day at Chicago General, Sarah confronted me in our dimly lit living room. She was sitting in the dark when I walked in, making me jump. "Where were you?" Her voice was unnaturally calm. "Out with friends from work," I answered, the familiar scent of the hospital still clinging to my scrubs. "The nurses?" The way she said it made it sound like an accusation. "Were you drinking?" I could smell the whiskey on my own breath, so there was no point denying it. "Yes." The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. Finally, she brought up the deadline I'd set for our relationship. "Has anything changed for you? Do you feel anything yet?" The question caught me off guard. I chose my words carefully. "I appreciate the efforts you've been making, but I'm still uncertain about our future." Her composure cracked. "You're being dismissive," she accused, her voice rising. "You're not even trying to make this work." "What do you mean?" "I've gone out with you whenever you've asked, supported your photography. You don't smile anymore." She burst out, her voice breaking. "When we're together, you barely talk. You're just there. Physically present, but mentally gone." "You know how I feel," I reminded her gently. "And these past few weeks, between work and I'm trying so hard." She cut me off, tears starting to fall. "I've been more active than I've ever been, pushing myself until I'm mentally exhausted. And nothing is changing." "You still don't want me." What followed was a complete breakdown. Through her sobs, Sarah poured out everything. Her overwhelming love for me, her sense of betrayal, her anger at my stupid conditions for continuing our relationship. She questioned whether I'd ever truly loved her, insisted that without me, she had nothing. No one, no future, no will to live. I stood frozen, watching her fall apart in a way I'd never seen before. Her usually quiet voice rose to near screaming levels, her words becoming increasingly desperate. As a nurse, I'd seen many emotional crises, but watching someone you once loved completely unravel is different. It's personal in a way that stops your breath. When she finally locked herself in our bedroom, I didn't follow. The days that followed were silent and heavy, with Sarah refusing to speak whenever I tried to check on her, screaming at me to go away through the door. Several days later, after nearly a week of silence, Sarah emerged from her isolation, completely transformed. Her demeanor had shifted from hostile to apologetic, though something felt different this time. She approached me with a composure I hadn't seen before. "I'm sorry for everything I said," she began, her voice steady despite the dark circles under her eyes. "I didn't mean most of it. I was just scared." The days I'd spent alone had given me clarity. Working in the you learn to trust your instincts, and everything in me was saying it was time to make a clean break. Looking at her now, I spoke with the same gentle firmness I use when delivering difficult news to patients' families. "Sarah, it's over," I said quietly but firmly. "Completely over. I'll help you get on your feet. You can stay here for 2 more months while you find a job. But after that, we need to go our separate ways." She started to cry, but differently this time. These weren't the dramatic sobs of before, but quiet tears of defeat. Within a week, she found a part-time position at a local supermarket. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The following weeks, our communication dwindled to nearly nothing. When she wasn't at work, Sarah stayed in her room. I kept to the couch, finding a strange comfort in its familiar discomfort. The apartment felt lighter somehow, despite the heaviness between us. I started going out more with my hospital colleagues, feeling a freedom I hadn't experienced in years. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long began to lift. Then life, as it often does in the threw me a curveball. The pneumonia hit me like a freight train. One day I was fine, the next I could barely breathe. My lungs felt like they were operating at half capacity, each breath a struggle. Even with my medical training, I was caught off guard by how quickly it progressed. During the illness, when Sarah saw how sick I was, she offered me the bedroom back. I refused, stubbornly staying on the couch. But as the days passed and my condition worsened, our carefully constructed walls began to crack. She started checking on me, bringing food, making sure I was taking my medications. At first, I hated it. The forced interaction, the awkward dependency. But when you're running a fever and can barely breathe, pride takes a back seat to necessity. What started as basic caregiving evolved into something unexpected. During her breaks from the supermarket, she'd sit with me, sharing stories about her new job, her coworkers, the daily dramas of retail life. Her voice was different now, more animated, more present. The final confrontation. As September approached, bringing with it the end of our lease, I made my final decision. The brief connection we'd rebuilt during my illness couldn't erase everything that had happened. I needed a complete fresh start. One Saturday morning, I sat down with Sarah to tell her. The words felt heavy but necessary. "I'm not renewing the lease," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I need to move on, focus on my career, my future, living together. It's not healthy for either of us." I watched the color drain from her face as my words sank in. The transformation was instant and terrifying. All the progress she'd made, the stability she'd started to build, shattered in seconds. "You're abandoning me?" Her voice rose, thick with accusation. "After everything? After I took care of you when you were sick?" I tried to maintain my professional calm, the same steady presence I bring to the during a crisis. "I'm not abandoning you, Sarah. I'm taking care of myself. There's a difference." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion, like those moments in the just before a code blue. Sarah lunged forward, her face contorted with rage and pain. I didn't see her hand coming until it connected with my face, the impact shocking more than painful. The moment hung between us like shattered glass. Sarah's expression shifted from rage to horror as she realized what she'd done. Her hands flew to her mouth, apologies already spilling out. I left without a word, my medical training kicking in as I assessed myself for injury. A colleague at the hospital insisted on checking me over, though physically I was fine. The real damage wasn't visible on any medical chart. Epilogue. Later that night, I sent Sarah one final message. I won't press charges. But this is it. Don't contact me again. You have resources and a job now. Use them. Stay away from me. The next day, I packed my things efficiently, the way we pack trauma kits in the quickly, thoroughly, with no room for hesitation. As I closed the door for the last time, I felt the weight of the past few years finally lift from my shoulders. In the we often say that the most dangerous moment for a patient is when they seem to be getting better. That's when you need to be most vigilant. Looking back, I realized our relationship had followed the same pattern. But unlike in the sometimes the only way to help someone is to walk away and let them save themselves.